Okay, so I'll tell you what he called. I'll tell you a very, since it's only us, I'll tell you a very, very interesting, kind of a deep idea. It's not so simple. Not so simple. Take a look at, first of all, Perek Ches Pasuk Yud, page 982 at the bottom. This is all the laws of benching. It says, Ve'achalta v'savata v'rachtas Hashem lokecha al oretz ha'teva al oretz ha'teva asher nasan lach. You know what? Over, cut it for 1 second. I want to get some water. I'm very hoarse. Still I'm hoarse from the medication. So the idea over here is that when you eat, to be satisfied when you eat is part of the bracha. Ve'chalta v'savata, that's part of the bracha. Some people read it ve'chalta v'savata u'beirachta, uvarachta. You shall eat and be satisfied and run away. That's what some people call it. It's a chalta v'savata uveirachta. The part of the blessing is that we're able to, we thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu just for the ability to be satiated when you eat. Now, the bigger challenge here is benching. V'chalta v'savata uveirachta. It's the only bracha that's deoraisa that you know. The benching is deoraisa. All other brachas are derabanan. That's why if you have a suffix, if you benched or not, so you have to bench. Because suffix deoraisa l'chumra. If you have a suffix on a deoraisa, so you have to be stringent. So if you don't remember if you benched or not, so then you have to bench again if there's a suffix because it's a deoraisa. I always was puzzled by that because if you benched and you don't remember if you benched, then even if you did, it couldn't have been much of a great benching. I don't remember if I just spoke to Hashem for 5 minutes or not. Shalom Aleichem.
Is it okay if I crash this year?
It's okay if you crash this year. Shalom Aleichem. Aaron?
10.
Oh, Shalom Aleichem. Okay. Shalom Aleichem. There's a Chicago connection here. Minneapolis, Chicago connection, yeah. So we're on page 9. No. That's not a connection. Even John knows that. John's learned already to say Chas v'Sholom. You heard John said Chas v'Sholom. So there's an idea that benching is. We're on page 982 towards the bottom. There's the idea that benching is a deoraisa, and so if you have a doubt whether or not you benched, so then you should bench. Then you have to bench again because it's a Torah. It's a suffix deoraisa. So when I was in Kollel, Rabbi Avram Stern, who's now a Rav in Beitar, he's a big Rav in Beitar. So he told us when I was in Kollel, he gave us a Musar Shavuos, and he once said that when you benching never comes at a good time, because benching is right after you eat, right? Especially on Shabbos. Right? You sit there, by the time you're ready to bench, you're ready to collapse. So he gave us an idea. He said that we should time ourselves when we bench. He said, give yourself 3.5 minutes to bench, and if you finish before 3.5 minutes, you can't do anything. You can't look at a sefer, you can't answer your phone, you can't do it, you can't talk. You have to just sit there until 3.5 minutes elapses, so that you train yourself to give yourself a certain amount of time for benching. So I tried it. I went home. I thought, 3.5 minutes is not a big deal. It's 3.5 minutes. So I went home and I decided to bench. I gave a good benching with kavana. I mean, it was, flames were shooting down from heaven from that benching. And then I looked at my watch, it was 2 minutes and 45 seconds. Right? And it got so difficult that I cut it down to 3 minutes. So to this day, when I bench, not on Shabbos, I don't have a stopwatch, but usually when I bench during the week, I have a stopwatch and I put it on a 3 minute. I time myself. And if I finish before 3 minutes, then I have to sit there like a goylem and do nothing. And it's a challenge every time. So what I found is if you have kavanah on the first bracha, you'll usually make it. If you just start out with you're finished. You're going to finish in about 1 minute and 45 seconds. You'd be amazed how quickly you can go. But if you give yourself the discipline, so then it starts. You get trained, and it's a deoraisa. I saw one of the gedolim said you should have as much kavanah and benching as you do in Shemona Esrei, even more. The benching is deoraisa. So benching is when you're what do you call it? The problem is that it's a challenging time, especially on Shabbos. Especially you're full. You've had 4 helpings of cholent. You can barely keep yourself vertical, and now you got to go and bench. It's a big challenge. So there are many that say you should bench with a bencher. Now, ironically, I have found that I bench better without a bencher. I found that if I just sit there and I close my eyes and say to bencher, which I don't do during davening. During davening, I daven out of a sitter. I found if I close my eyes during Shemon Esrei, I end up all over the world. I don't need to travel during vacation. All I got to do is daven Shemon Esrei, and I end up everywhere. It's much cheaper that way too, and I've traveled first class. But if I found that benching is for many people, if you're using the bencher, and you use big words. Sometimes, the problem is that most people in their house, their benchers are just a collection of old wedding invitation benchers, where the print is about this big. Sometimes I see people daven mincha. They have these little mincha ma'ariv sidurim, which look like basically a postage stamp. You ever see these little sidurim? People are davening mincha ma'ariv. You can't daven like that. The bigger the words, the more it enhances the kavanah. So Rav Steinman's wife, Rebbetzin Steinman, so towards the end of her life, she had to have a tube to be fed through a feeding tube through her stomach. So they asked her if it bothers her. They asked her not if it bothers her, what bothers her the most about it. She said, what do you think your average person would say if he had to live with a feeding tube? What bothers him? He can't eat anymore. He can't eat ice cream, can't eat cake, can't eat meat, can't have. What bothered her? She said, she misses being able to bench. Rav Steinman himself, they once asked him how when he benches on Shabbos, he never forgets Ritzei. Ever forget Ritzei on Shabbos? The addition and benching, then you got to bench again. Unless you catch it at the right time, you throw in the addition. So they asked Rav Steinman how come he never misses Ritzei? And he says because he never eats bread during the week. So he's used to, when he benches, to him saying it with Ritzei is his regular benching, because he doesn't eat bread during the week. He barely ate anything during the week. Rosh Chodesh, but the thing is that Rosh Chodesh, you don't have to go back if you forget Yalav in benching, because there's no chiyuv to eat a suda. You have to go back if you forget Yalav Yavah Shemon Esrei, but not in benching. So that's the what do you call it? So on Yontif, yes. But not on Rosh Chodesh and Chol Moed, because it's not a chiyuv. Okay. Now I want to show you something which is a little bit off, a little bit different than what we would think. Take a look at Perek Ches Pasuk Yud Zayin. So here it starts from what do you call it? It actually starts from 980, a couple psukim up. So Moshe Rabbeinu talks about how Kodesh Baruch Hu takes them through the desert. Pick it up from Pasuk Tesov. Hamolichecha b'midbar. There's 7 lines on the top. Hamolichecha b'midbar hagadol ve'anora nochosh saraf ve'akrav v'tzimaon asher ein mayim. Takes it through the desert where there are snakes and serpents and basilisks. What's it called? Basilisk and scorpions and thirst, and there's no water. Hamotzi lecha mayim mitzorecha mashi. Produced water from the rock. Hamachilcha man b'midbar, then he fed you man, asher leyodun avasecha, leman anoscha uleman asosecha leitivcha b'achriyecha. It was to test you. He fed you the man to test you. Now, the what do you call it? The man, part of their different opinions of what the test was. I mean, if at the end of the day, if you have what to eat and you're getting it for free, so what are you complaining about? So part of the test is that you don't know when it's going to come down. You got to daven every day that the month should come down. They didn't give it. They got Kodesh Baruch Hu them. Unfortunately, asked why did Kodesh Baruch Hu just give them? You could have given them refrigerators also. If you could produce money, you could do supernatural refrigerators too. Because the whole point is that they should go to sleep at night. Remember, a Jewish man in the desert, his wife gave birth to 6 at a time, so a small family is 24 kids. Right? A larger family is 60. Then you could have another family with 96. So you're talking about people who had to worry about feeding their families. Every night you got to go to sleep, so you daven. So that's the point of withholding it. That's one of the suffering of the man. The other is that the man doesn't have the appearance of food. It doesn't have the appearance of food. And part of the enjoyment of eating is seeing the food. Right? If you have, what do you call it, that thing called the Impossible Burger? If you had that Impossible Burger, right? So part of the why they say it imitates meat. You know, it's that meat substitute. They make the Impossible Burger, and it even bleeds like a burger. Because when you eat a hamburger, you want to see kind of that, you know, that juicy, that what do you call it? So they've even created it because the appearance has to be. Do you know that Pepsi once tried? They marketed something called Pepsi Clear. It was the exact same amount. I don't know what a year. It's the same sugar, same caffeine, same delicious chemicals. It was all everything except they took out the black color. And there was no loss. Anybody needs the caffeine or the sugar, it was all there. And it had the same taste, and it bombed on the market. It bombed. Because people, I don't want to, if I'm drinking Pepsi, I want to see how unhealthy it is. I don't want to just think about how unhealthy it is. I want to see that black tar looking, that was, and it bombed. They once try it with ketchup? They tried like blue ketchup and green ketchup. Everybody, right? And green ketchup, and it bombed. It didn't make it. Because people think ketchup is tomato, it tastes like tomato, and they think it's right. Ketchup is not red. The red in the ketchup, when they crush the tomatoes for ketchup, it turns into almost a white pulp. And then they add various, you didn't know that, did you, Adam? You thought it was just those delicious red tomatoes. That's exactly what they want you to think. That's why green didn't make it. Yeah, okay, great. It's white. It's a white pulp, almost a transparent pulp. And then they add all sorts of healthy food colorings to it, which every few years the federal government tells you takes them off the market because they cause you to start to all sorts of problems. Right? You end up you have this that and the other. But you eat with your eyes. So that was part of the torture of the mun. The suffering for the mun was that the mun didn't look like the food. Then the Torah says like this: Hamar ve'amarta bilvavcha. This is the malady that people suffer from, that a person thinks to himself, I did it on my own. And the Torah says, you should remember Hashem, it's Hashem who gives you the koach. So first of all, the Mefarshim explain over here, when it comes to kochi v'otzem yadi, there's always that feeling that people have that I did it. To the degree that the word I is involved, and it doesn't matter where, because it could be a wealthy man who's giving away tzedakah and his I gave it. It could be somebody who has mastered a lot of Torah, and he feels, well, I did it because I did a lot of review. And at the end of the day, to the degree that the I is prominent is the degree that the person is guilty of this idea of kochi v'otzem yadi. So sometimes people feel, well, how am I supposed to overcome that feeling of kochi v'otzem yadi? A guy said, I was watching the market, and I noticed the pattern, and I noticed this, and I noticed that. The correct Torah hashkafa is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, sometimes a person makes a decision, is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts the thought into the person's mind. And the way he puts a thought into the person's mind is often by manipulating outside circumstances. So if a person is, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants a person to choose a certain profession. He wants somebody to become an accountant. So he creates the circumstances where all of a sudden accounting school is easy to get into, and political and the other professions are not, or dentistry, or whatever it is. And the thought for the person is really a result, even the thought that a person has a result of control of dropping the thought in his mind. Remember I told you this story about the guy who smashes the wine barrels, the Medrash Tanchuma. The Medrash says there was a guy who didn't meiser, he didn't tithe his produce religiously. He was a very wealthy man. So because he didn't tithe it, one day he was gripped by a foolishness. He took a club and he went into his wine cellar and he started smashing his barrels. So his son saw him, so his son took a club and he started smashing the barrels too. They went and just, without any rhyme or reason, they went and destroyed their property with a bunch of wine barrels, caused a tremendous amount of financial loss. So a person looks at it and goes, oh, who would do such a thing? Who would do so? Who would go destroy their own barrels? Right, what's the answer? We see it happening every day. People make foolish investments every day. Aren't there people who, sometimes you don't, you take a guess. There are other people who sometimes they invest in something and after they lose their money go, what was I thinking? Why would I have done something like that? The very thought, Rabbi Yechiel Per says, the very thought of how to invest, HaKadosh Baruch Hu drops a thought into the person's mind or creates circumstances to move a person in a certain direction. So why would you even think, a person, we look at these, sometimes you see these people who lost massive amounts of money. The person, I would never have invested, I would have put half of it away and I would have put this, and that's what you say now because you don't have the money. This guy also thought he would never do that till he got the money. It's not in our hands, that's the basic idea here. And when in general, where the attitude of we can do it, which is what Israel is most guilty of, like Israel is the mouse that roared, right? And they're always flexing their muscles, but looking over their shoulders to ask America if they could do it or not. They have zero decision-making ability on their own. They have to do whatever they're told to do because they're totally dependent on America. So there's an idea of kochi ve'otze biyadi. A person feels, I did it, I accomplished it, it was my talent, my ability, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu abhors. Okay, I want to take this a little deeper. There's a medrash. Now listen to this medrash. The medrash said there were 4 kings. All right, you hear this? The medrash says there were 4 kings. Dovid HaMelech said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, please Hashem, let me chase after them and defeat them. Let me chase after my enemies and defeat them. That's what Dovid HaMelech said. King Asa said, let me chase after them, but you, Hashem, kill them. I'll chase, you kill. King Yehoshaphat said, I don't even want to chase. I'll sing. Singing means a form of also tefillah through singing. I'll sing a shira, and Hashem will do it. And King Chizkiyahu said, I'll sleep and let Hashem do it. Okay, so you got 4 kings here. Let's review them again. Let's get it clear. David HaMelech davens, I'll chase them and fight the war. And he davens, Hashem, help me to win the war so I could kill them. But I'll do the stabbing and I'll get the job satisfaction, right? But you help me. King Asa said that he'll chase. I'll chase the enemy, but I'm not going to go, yeah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'll leave the rest to you. King Yehoshaphat said, I'll sing a shira HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and then you take care of the rest. I'll say it tefillah. And King Chizkiyahu said, I'll go to sleep and you take care of him. I'll lie in bed and you do it for me. Now, Jonathan, which one of these 4 kings has the most bitachon?
It sounds like the one who wants to just sleep and chill.
Oh.
David has to be right somehow.
David has to be right somehow. Oh, Jonathan, you've been in Yeshiva. You've been in Yeshiva. He's picked up the pattern over here. You know? Yes.
Help him out because he's saying that he's going to do the act. He's going to act on it, but you know that Hashem's the one really.
Excellent. Very good, John. Very good. That means like this. Most people look at this medrash and you think, sure, the biggest form of bitachon is I'll get into bed, let Hashem do it for me, right? And if I'm a little less, if I'm not quite on that madrega, so I'll sing a shira. Da-da-da-da, you know, na-na-na, you know, let HaKadosh Baruch Hu go in. And if I'll have to do some chasing. If I really don't have bitachon, I'll have to go out and do it myself. So Rabbi Feinstein says it's exactly the opposite. The highest level of bitachon is that a person, you do the physical action and you realize you're not doing anything. I'm doing the stabbing and shooting and bombing, and I realize I'm not doing anything. That's the highest level of bitachon. Because it's very easy to be kidnapped by our own efforts. King Asa, who is the next one? King Asa says, well, I could chase, but if I actually start stabbing, then I'm going to think that I'm doing it. Up to the point that it's a lower level of bitachon. And King Yehoshaphat says, I can't do anything physical, I'll just sing. As soon as I pick up my hand, then I get confused. I get myself involved in the picture. And Chizkiyahu says that I'm going to have to stay in bed. If the minute I do anything, then I confuse myself. I did it. That's the what do you call it? That's
pretty brilliant.
It's brilliant, right? That's what Rabbi said. It's exactly the opposite of what you would think. It's exactly the opposite of what you would think, because the goal of life is that's why when a person goes to work, a person has to know that when you go to work, a person feels, I've earned it. There's only a gzeira, it's only a decree from Hashem that B'zeas apecha tocha alechem, Hashem made a decree on Adam Rishon, you're going to have to sweat to eat. But that sweating to eat is really just a form of tefillah. It's just a form of tefillah, it's just a form of physical tefillah. You know what the definition of a great job is, don't you? You don't know the definition of a great job? A great job is where not only you're getting overpaid for what you do, right? But you feel you're really being, you're way overpaid. And what, somebody's paying me for this? I think that's a great job. Somebody's paying me for this? Can you imagine being a professional baseball player? And what would you do in your spare time if you weren't playing baseball? I'd be playing baseball. That's a pretty good job. But at the end of the day, you feel, I've earned it. You just crossed that line. The I word got in there. When I was a kid, I remember I was about 10 years old, 11 years old. My father, he once said to me, try to leave the word I out of your vocab. Don't use the word I so much. My father said to me, I was a little kid, I was about 11 years old. I remember thinking to myself, well, then how am I going to talk about myself if I can't use the word I? I wasn't the sharpest knife in the kitchen, But as soon as the word I, Rabbi Sinclair once told a story. These two friends haven't seen each other for a few. They meet each other at a restaurant, and the first lady says to the lady, she talk. After about a half hour, she says, "Listen, that's enough about me. Now you talk about me for a little bit." Right? That's the human nature. And the more that a person thinks about that he's been involved with it, that he's done it, the more that's a manifestation of kochi v'atzir. We're going to ask Mayor.
Yeah, I'm saying is it some idea of a partnership, like Dovid Amelech's way of approaching it? Because it's like Hashem allowed me to fulfill His will. That could be phrased in that way.
Right, but he realizes all the way that it's all yes, exactly. And when we're doing it and we think that there's something that we're contributing to the cause, that's the problem. That's the problem. The problem is where we think that we're doing. We have to do it because it's a gzeira. That's what people have to realize. So why am I going to work at all? If it's all, why can't I be king? I'd much rather be King Chizkiyahu. Yeah, Chizkiyahu's got it. Stay in bed. The answer is because there's a decrease at the time of Adam Arishon. B'zeas apecha tocha alechem. You have to do it, and in spite of that, try to figure out that it's me. It's a very difficult thing. Yeah.
Where's the part that we're doing, though?
What do you mean? Where's the part that we're doing?
We have free will and we have our own.
You have to choose to do. You have to behave responsibly. If responsibility, see when it comes to bitachon, in your society, how much the Rambam says to work 3 hours a day. Everybody has to work. You work 3 hours a day and you learn Torah 9 hours a day. That's great. Find a job that you can support your family nowadays with 3 hours a day working. We all know you can't. Well, we all know you can't unless you're the King of England, right? But other than that, you can't support your family or you're the president's son, right? If you're the president's son, then you can support yourself very well. Right? You get involved in some shady deals in Ukraine, and it's a good parnasa. But other than that, those jobs, those positions aren't that readily available. So what are you going to do? You work 3 hours a day, but in your heart of hearts, you believe. Let's say you're a lawyer. Say you become a lawyer. How many hours a day does a lawyer have to work nowadays in America? How many hours does a lawyer have to work? 8. 8. That's not even half of his day. Yeah. Guys coming out of law school sometimes work 16 hours a day, and sometimes the new guys, and that's why they'll sleep in the office, right? And if you tell a guy coming out of law school, well, I'm going to work 3 hours a day. Oh, you are you? You're going to be sweeping the subway. In 10 minutes, you're going to be working and you'll be sweeping the subway. Because you know in your heart of hearts that you're not going to make out 3 hours a day. So bitachon very often is how much you have to do is what you believe is you have to do based on what your society demands. That's what it demands. So in Israel, for example, everybody in Israel works 2 jobs and does something on the side. That's what happens in Israel. You work this job, you work that job, and you sell eggs out of your house or something. There's always everybody in Israel does. There's always something else that you do. But that's what your society demands. That's what your society demands. That's what real bitachon is. Okay. I want to finish up Eikev today because I want to go on to Re'eh tomorrow. I've never done Re'eh here. Okay. take a look at Perek Tes, Pasuk Chaf. This is also a very an interesting fundamental. Moshe Rabbeinu on page 986, bottom line. So Moshe Rabbeinu says that he's going through the whole story, and he says, Uve Aaron hisanaf Hashem me'od la'ashmido. Hashem got very angry at Aaron to destroy him. And I davened for Aaron. So what does Rashi say? Rashi said that I was able to get him off the hook on 2 of his sons, but really he deserved that all of his sons would die. Okay, now the question here becomes, where is it? Ba'esahi. Right. That his sons, that Aaron deserved to have his sons die. Now, earlier the Torah said, why did Nadav and Avihu die? Why did Nadav and Avihu die? Because they brought the what do you call it? And they brought the fire into the Kodesh HaKodashim, right? So, what was the cause of their death? Here it says that Aaron deserved to have his sons die, and Moshe Rabbeinu davened, and only 2 of them died. Earlier it says that they did the Aveira, and why did, and then even earlier than that it says that when they went to Har Sinai, that they gazed on the Shekhinah, whatever that means, they gazed at the Shekhinah, they deserved to die. So what was the cause of their death? That what they did or what Aaron did?
Could be both.
What do you mean?
It means that when they're killed, that's also a fulfillment of Aaron's punishment as well.
Oh.
So it's a way to get back at both of them.
Excellent. Get back at both of
That's
them.
not a good way to phrase it.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
a way to carry out Hashem's justice. So I'm just going to take what you said is correct. I'll take it a step deeper. I'll take it a step further. A human judge, when there's somebody commits a crime, the human judge looks at only one thing. He only looks at the criminal and the crime that the criminal committed. And then they sentence him to jail, or they sentence him to whatever the punishment is. Where does his family come in? His wife, his children, people who need to eat. Where do they come in? The answer is they don't. The judge doesn't take that into account at all. The guy committed a crime. They just said, what was this guy? They said the FBI went. There was a guy who is accused of committing crimes. He killed about four different women, and the FBI went to raid his house. And they ripped the house to shreds. They ripped up the floorboards in the backyard, and they just ripped the whole house to shreds. And his wife, or his son, whoever was, a couple of the family members had to move out of the house. They have nowhere to go. And so, what's going on over here? Where do we come into? Why does our house getting ripped up because of him? But a human judge, that's the way it works. We can't account for everybody. In HaKadosh Baruch Hu's judgment system, there's going to be checks and balances. It says, on the one hand, they deserve to die. On the other hand, Aaron doesn't deserve the pain of losing them. So it's got to work. That's why if Aaron doesn't deserve the pain, they're not going to die. When is the fate sealed? Exactly what Jonathan is saying. At the point that Aaron does an Avera that deserves to have his sons die, but if his sons haven't done an Avera, they're not. Why should they die because Aaron deserves to have his sons die? What they do wrong? That's why you need both factors. Therefore, you need both factors working, because that's the complicated. That's why it says that a person, like on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, that we daven HaKadosh Baruch Hu for another year of life. So the Bali Musar all say one of the best things a person could do in order to enhance his chances for life is to make yourself a person who's needed by other people. If you're somebody, let's say you're a member of Hatzalah, for example, and you go around saving lives. So then, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides that this guy deserves to die, this Hatzalah guy deserves to die, yeah, but maybe the other people who need lives he saves, they don't deserve to die. So he can be kept alive in the merit of the other people. They don't deserve. Somebody deserves to die, but his family members don't deserve the pain of losing him. He can be kept alive because they don't deserve it. Then you need circumstances in both directions in order to create it. That's a Torah. Whereas a judge, from a human judge, can never do that. A human judge can never. There's no way that a human judge can make those calculations. And society can't. You see, the Torah doesn't make those calculations either. Beis Din doesn't make those calculations. If somebody's chayv bisa, they execute him. What about the wife? What about the children? Okay, it's a problem. It's a problem. Don't be bad. And things are bad, like bad things don't happen. Be good. That's the most. Just be good. Yeah.
Is it the Egel when Aaron?
Even at the Egel is what triggered it. On the other hand, we have a pasuk later on. This is also an unbelievable thought. Later on, the Gemara in Sanhedrin says that Aaron is credited for making the Egel because he was trying to stop the Jewish people from getting into bigger trouble. So there's actually a benefit in doing the Egel. And the answer is that you see that even in one action, a person could, on the one hand, be punished. Something about it is bad, and the other is good. The classic example are the Lot's daughters. Lot's daughters. What happened? The daughters go into the cave with Lot, and they get pregnant. And the older one names her son Moab. She's less discreet about it. And therefore, the Moabites are punished that the Jewish people, they torment them before they're not allowed to go to war with them, but they torment them. Why? Because she was less. Ammon, they're not even allowed to frighten. Moab, they're allowed to intimidate. Why? Because she was less discreet. On the other hand, the Gemara says because she took the initiative in the action, so she had a descendant who joined the Jewish people before the Ammonite descendant. Ruth joined the Jewish people 4 generations before Naomi, who came from Ammon. That was a merit. That was a merit to the mother, who was the initiator of that entire episode with Lot in the cave. So in one action, on the one hand, she initiated it. Therefore, she gets, Ruth comes from her. On the other hand, you don't have to be so why are you so indiscreet? Why do you have to be so indiscreet?
How is Moab being? I'm missing that. How is it being indiscreet? What's
Moab means from my father.
Okay.
Yeah, there's something a tad indiscreet about that. As Ammon is Ben Ami, it's meaning my nation. She's punished for that. What do you have to go make a public service announcement for? You put it up on the internet. It's like nowadays, everything. Every time a person, every single thing. There was a story here. This is one of the worst things I ever heard. A chassan and kala get married. They go into the yichud room, and the kala takes a selfie and puts it up on the what do you call it, while they're in the yichud room. That means the first time they're a husband and wife, the most private moment with them in the Shechina, and they're supposed to be able, and the whole world is locked out. You locked the entire world out. You just locked the door, kept the. What does she do? She got the whole world comes in. That's the world. We're so indiscreet. We don't even understand how indiscreet we are. I mean, I have conversations on the bus or on the. I feel like getting involved in the conversation. So Moab is so in the same action. On the one hand, you could, what do you call it? She did a tremendous thing. What's called an Aveira Lishma. She did a tremendous thing. She thought the world was going to end. On the other hand, she was indiscreet. So Aaron also, in one aspect of the Egel, he's credited. The other aspect of the Egel, he's faulted. And therefore, you can have two things. You can be rewarded and punished at the same time. Yeah.
Moshe striking the rock is like another complicated event like that, because supposedly he did it to help the Jewish people. Is there an element that we see inside that he's credited, or do we only see really evidence of that?
I don't remember seeing. It's a good question. I don't remember seeing Moshe's credited there. Okay. He did it, like you say, he did it because he felt that's what needed to be done. Okay, we'll stop here. My voice is about, I have to rest it.